Okay, thank you.
Yeah. School committee groupers.
All right, we'll get started. Welcome, everybody, to the regular school committee meeting of October 29th, 2014. Calling the meeting to order at 6:04. As always, the first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. If there are no objections, we'll consider the warrants from October 24th, 2014, and the minutes from October 8th, 2014 approved.
Budget.
Okay.
The minutes state, so when we talked about the goals, if I'm looking at the right
district
one,
improvement or
Yeah.
superintendent's?
actually both.
Okay.
We had asked that there be a base and there would be more information involved, and I didn't see any of it reflected, and it's not reflected here either. It just says that we had concerns or clarifying questions. Various clarifying questions. And
Okay, so
we
how,
actually asked for additional information on the goals, and I didn't see it.
so what would you like it itemized, the things that we talked about, or?
Well, I'd like it to say that at least that we had asked for additional information and that it's being reflected, but it's not.
So you can't say that then, right?
I'm sorry?
So you can't say that, so,
We can't say that we asked for,
well, you can say you asked for additional information, but if it,
right.
we should probably stipulate, or you should probably stipulate what it was that you wanted. I think that's what you're asking.
Okay.
Right, because to just say additional information doesn't
Okay.
enlighten anybody in any way, but if you want to have bullet points for what was added to it, then that could be added to the minutes, as
Okay.
long as people agree that that's what was actually said.
Well, I know we asked for a baseline,
Baseline on what?
all the goals. Because we can't measure it unless we know where we're starting from.
Okay.
So when we say we're going to do something, it's like, okay, we're already at this point, and we're going to move on from here.
But in each one of those goals, it would be a separate kind of baseline, because they're all different measurements that are being used.
Right.
Okay.
But you know, in everything I read, you have to know where you're starting from, and we don't. So, and we had a long conversation about that, and then and I know that not everybody agreed, but there was a certain point where I had asked for monetary value. You know, if there's going to be something, and you did talk about being in the budget, but I don't want to be surprised in the budget, because if we don't approve it in the budget, that means that the goal is no longer valid.
Okay, so maybe we should add to the minutes that Lynn asked that monetary values be put on.
Baseline for each goal and monetary value for each goal.
Well, I don't think everyone agreed that we.
We didn't, that's why I said say that Lynn said it.
Okay.
Because that's not how the process usually works, so it's fine to put in there that there was a person that requested that,
Right.
but I don't think we should all be having to agree that that's what we want, because we didn't agree to that.
No, you didn't.
So you just want me to add a line that says that Ms. Coletti requested baseline and monetary.
Well, I wasn't the only one that wanted baseline.
But I think there were a few of us. Nicole,
Yeah.
I don't know, do you have to stipulate, I don't know. Do you have to stipulate who's asked for it?
Well, I guess the problem that I'm having with it is you want us to vote on it tonight, on the goals. But everything that we asked, we asked for certain things, and some things we all agreed on, and some things we didn't. But I didn't see any of it reflected. I don't see baselines on the goals.
There are baselines, and I adjusted for the, we can talk about it now, or probably talk about it later in the meeting.
I think we
Yeah.
should talk about it later in the meeting,
Yeah.
because not
I'll
everybody
explain
here
where they
wants
are.
to
Yeah.
No, okay.
do that.
No, I just want to make sure that, what we had asked for, that the,
Okay, so how about if, for now, for this part of the agenda, we agree to add those lines to the minutes, and then we will address the issue when we reach the...
So I'm just going to put committee members requested baseline for each goal and Ms. Coletti requested monetary values be assessed for each goal.
So baseline metrics,
Baseline metrics,
right, and then Lynn wanted a,
monetary.
I don't know, range or whatever.
Is that satisfactory, Lynn?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just that, if I were to use an example, when you were looking at immersion had a monetary value associated with it. So if your goal had been, okay, because it's past, we can talk about it, but if your goal had been, we're going to put immersion in this year, right, and we all agreed to it, and then budget comes around and we said, no, we can't afford that, and all of a sudden we don't have a valid goal. the goal's gone, because we can't support it. So, you know, if we don't know that ahead of time, then, I mean, you need to have something to measure,
Right.
you know? And that's why, it's not,
Right, which is, I think, we're gonna see that those were added.
okay.
Okay. Anything else in the minutes or the warrants? No? Okay. Moving right along to the superintendent's report. Michael?
All right, so the first thing is the ABC quarter report. Is a document in there prepared by our executive director. And just to highlight what has been worked on so far this year is our compliance with the new collaborative law and its implementation for the ensuing school year. We've also highlighted the accomplishments of our work last year and completed, and gave some highlights of things that we're working on this year, both the priorities and some of the challenges that we're facing as an entity. All in all, financially, the ABC is in the best financial shape it's been ever, and you know, we're going strong. But as always, it's an entity that is dependent on its membership and enrollment. So the good news is that we have several community school districts that are interested in our collaborative and joining our collaborative. So that's a positive. So we think that our enrollment will benefit from that as well overall in our district collaborative program. So that's good news.
Does the collaborative have space?
Does the collaborative? We have room to grow. Yeah, we have a building that has room to be able to expand, and many of our programs are actually also in schools because they're inclusion programs. And we have enrollment growth there that we can absorb.
So when you grow and they need more space, are we paying for that? How does that get,
Well, the collaborative pays for it, sure.
which means that our portion increases? We get a capital expense associated.
So our funding source is only through tuitions. So we do not have a capital maintenance fee or capital fee. We have a minimal membership fee. I think we pay $5,500 is our fee. So it's all driven by tuition. So actually, right now, for example, we are funded almost roughly 45% by students within the collaborative and about 55% from outside the collaborative.
So it's pretty much self-sustaining.
Yeah,
Good.
which was our goal. So other things I'll highlight on my report, we had the concession, seems like a long time ago now, but October 10th we had our concession stand grand opening. Lots of attention has been given to trying to complete that entire project, and it really is been a collaborative effort between the boosters and Bill Clary's department and himself and Mr. King, and just making that a really wonderful final touch to the campus or the complex as a whole. So we're very proud of it. We're working on our security protocol. We're working with our area police chiefs and fire chiefs. We'll have more on that in coming weeks, but essentially what we have in draft form is using what components of the ALICE program, and so we hope to look at how to move forward with some definitive elements of that and making it clear. We're still working on how to make sure that we understand who and how we would counter, as well as evacuate our buildings, which is the main concern of our police departments in our community. So we're working through some language around that. But I think the tenor of the meeting was that we should move forward with this particular approach because it is aligns with the federal guidelines as well as the new report by the state. I've included my goals for another review tonight, as well as the mass training modules are in your packet so that we can talk about those for upcoming meetings, maybe December or January. The honor roll, I think, because of timing, so we're not going to be discussing that tonight, and so we will put it off for another night, whichever our next meeting is, whether it be the 12th or the 19th. We are beginning our budget process, and so met with the administrators on Monday, and we are kicking that off and have the conversations with the administrators on how to go about the process for working collaboratively with their school councils and their staff and so forth. I'm suggesting that maybe some forums with teachers. We did this a few years ago. I thought that was very helpful and informative, especially where we have new staff, new members of the school committee. I think it would be a great opportunity for them to meet with our staff as well. So maybe we could design a way to have it, have a meeting or a forum, however we want to classify it, a little earlier so that we can encourage staff to come. I think if we have it earlier, we'll get more staff to attend. And so, sure.
Sorry, that for that's
Yep, that can be.
The honor roll, just going.
Yes.
Does that mean, so if I get a question from anybody, does that mean that we're using the current honor roll? Because grades are Friday for the high
Right.
school.
Right.
So the current honor roll for this year, and then that's next year, or?
So I think that needs to be decided when we decide it. I think that would be,
Discussion.
yeah, that's under
Thank you.
discussion. So
I just didn't know.
I think that's something that's got to yet to be decided. Middle school, it would work because it's much later for the trimester, but you're right. Definitely for the first quarter, it's up in the air.
There were unfortunately some technical questions that haven't been answered yet,
Right.
which is why we're postponing the discussion.
Yes.
Because we don't have, I don't think we have enough information for us to be able to vote with adequate information in our hands.
So other places that I think in the coming meetings we would like to meet with staff. We have the NEAS preparation. We're going to be having NEAS visit in March. Leo Sakalarian and Cheryl Gallagher are co-advisors for the NEAS process, and I think it would be very helpful to you as a group, because you do meet with the NEAS visiting team, to have Leo and Cheryl go over the site self-study report that NEAS will be using for many of their questions for faculty and for you, as well as they did the Endicott survey, and that data is available. So I think first we look at the self-study, because that's our own people looking at the areas of the standards, and then the Endicott study, which is faculty and parents and students, so that you're familiar with that information as well.
Is that going to be different information than we've seen in bits and pieces along the way, or is it?
So it's, the self-study is a composite of the report, of the so the mini reports that we heard from the faculty.
Yes.
So now you'll get the end result of what they talked about,
Okay.
because they talked about their standards, and now we'll see what their opinions are of how our faculty and school meet those standards. Just as pieces of information, I've been appointed to the Foundation Review Commission. It's a state house initiative, and we're looking at the foundation formula, which is a component of the Chapter 70 formula, and there will be some public hearings, 6 of them around the Commonwealth in the coming weeks and months. So they're looking for a broad-based understanding and interest in input from families and parents and students and administrators and teachers. So those will be throughout the Commonwealth, which I think is a great way to get that input. We're going to be working collectively with our administrators in the coming weeks and months around district-determined measures. Last year, we spent time with our teachers and designed their district-determined measures. Now it's our turn for us to have these, and so we'll be working to develop those. And I was fortunate enough to work at the Tsongas Arena for an afternoon. I was a ticket taker for the Central Mass cheerleading competition, so I didn't get to see any of our students. Many of our students were there, but by the sounds from the inner auditorium, it was a lot of fun. And then lastly, our collaborative, we have a section of our agenda on a routine basis of superintendents talking about issues within their districts. The Northborough, Southborough superintendent raised a question to the superintendents. They have a community group, it is not a school-sponsored group, that has been researching school start times and the impact of the early starts on adolescent student behavior and academic success. And she has encouraged them to reach out because, as we've talked about before, it's difficult to make that kind of paradigm shift for communities alone. And so she is interested in knowing if at least the collaborative districts would like to volunteer members to a broad-based group that could look at this research and talk about it and make some discussion and recommendations around whether or not start times changing is something we want to do as an area. All of our ABC communities are connected. We border one another. So
You want the whole district to change terms, not just the collaborative.
So the idea would be that all the districts, at least within the collaborative, would maybe pilot something or whatever.
So instead of having the 7:30 start time for high school, they want a 9 o'clock start time?
I don't think that, I haven't met with the group, so I don't know what they're thinking in terms of suggestions. I'm thinking it's just a flip, like elementary starts at 8 and high school starts at 9 or something like that.
So high school would get out at 4?
It all depends on what length of day, because we all have different lengths of day. So maybe it's 8 and 8:45 or whatever. I don't think they're ready to talk about solutions. I think what they're really interested in talking about is looking at the research and trying to build an understanding of why it's a topic that seems to be percolating right now. We have several school systems in the area that are looking at it. Natick for one, Ashland for one. They've been recently in the news. So it's definitely something that is getting more and more attention. There was a recent report out from
What is the
the...
issue, that the kids aren't getting enough sleep?
Yes, I mean, that's part of it.
So instead of making them go to bed early, we're gonna make them go to school late?
Well, it's tough to make a teenager go to bed early.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
No, but, all right.
So,
Give us just a little direction here. Should we be thinking, putting feelers out, talking to people?
yeah.
So that we can have a discussion about this at a later date, because we're not discussing it tonight.
Right, so I think the question that was put to us was to bring it to our school committees to see if there was any member of the school committee or within our communities that would like to take part in this kind of conversation. So,
Sounds like Nicole does.
it sounds
Yeah,
like she did.
she did express an interest in the topic.
Yep. So, and that's my report.
The Foundation Review Commission, you said
Mhm.
you were chosen
Yes.
by,
I am representing so the state, when they formulated the commission, people were given the seats. The Massachusetts Association of Regional School Districts was given a seat, and I was chosen to represent them.
for all regional school districts.
Yes.
Wow. Congratulations. And their only focus right now is Chapter 70?
And even a smaller piece of it, just the foundation formula.
The formula for chapters.
The formula for the foundation component of the Chapter 70 formula.
I
Which
just
is,
don't know what that is.
yeah, it's a piece of the broader
Formulas
formula.
like this.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
All right, any questions for Michael? Moving along to subcommittee reports. First up is our student advisory representative, Talia, from the high school.
So Neshoba is looking forward to Halloween. This afternoon, Neshoba Best Buddies participated in trick-or-treating through the halls of the high school. DECA members attended the Fall State Leadership Conference at Bentley University today as well. Students got a tour of the Market Research Center and the stock room, and also learned how to dress for success. Neshoba Field Hockey showed support for their teammate Michelle, who is battling cancer, by compiling some of the videos they made for her during each game into a You Fight, We Fight YouTube video. It is titled NFH Loves Michelle and currently has almost 3,000 views. The journalism students have recently launched a new website at cheechampress.net to cover both Neshoba and world news. In sports news, the regular season has come to an end and the postseason is about to begin. The golf team finished their season at 9-7 and placed 8th in the Central Massachusetts. The cross-country teams ended the regular season with a record 5-1. The boys team won the Wachusett Invitational and the league championship last week. The boys soccer team has been playing well at the end of the season. The team finished their season on the road at Bromfield today. The football team is currently 2-4 and lost a tough one-touchdown game last week in Fitchburg. Neshoba hosts Westboro this Friday night. The girls soccer team has ended their regular season with an overall record of 13-3-2. The team will find out their playoff seed on Friday, but will most likely be at home for the quarterfinal game next week. The volleyball team finished their season with a 13-7 record and is seeded 9th heading to number 8 Norton on Thursday afternoon to play the first round of the Division II Central East tournament. The field hockey team finished their season with a 6-1 record and earned the number 1 seed in the playoffs. The girls have a first-round bye and will host the winner of Wachusett Burncoat on Friday at 2:30. In addition, our field hockey team will be this week's Channel 5 High Five with Mike Lynch. On October 18th, many Neshoba band members traveled to Gillette Stadium to join 78 other schools at UMass Band Day. Student leaders will also be going to MIT to attend the Spark Conference, where the Dalai Lama will be speaking. Students are making gratitude flags to string together there. Neshoba also celebrated Purple Pinky Day in support of polio vaccinations for children in impoverished regions in Africa.
Awesome stuff going on.
Thank you. Facilities and finance, Maureen, is there?
Well, since we're in an off week, we didn't have to do the warrants this week because we signed last week. We did discuss, well, I attended the audit advisory subcommittee meeting on Monday, which was the auditor's report, and they will be coming to our November 19th meeting to give the report to the full school committee. Other things we talked about in finance were, let's see, a little discussion on our internet bandwidth and inventory of assets. So, other than that was about it. There's no personnel or no space study report. Policy was, Kara was going to report out.
So we have the second readings of the policies.
Okay, we'll get to that later. Julie's not here. I think that brings us right to new business. First item in new business is the first quarter financial statement. Assuming that's George.
So, as I stated, generally we are in good shape in the first quarter. There's no major variations from what we expect. There are two things on there that were just accounting issues. One of them was the technology. We buy the technology from our, we lease the technology, but in order to make the controls go through, we issue a purchase order for everything through our regular accounting system before we roll over into the lease, so we have a record of everything we bought. So right now, it looks like we spent more money on technology than we have, but since we're actually financing that money, once the lease reimburses the line, which will be in the very near future, that will then even out. The things we look at is our, any of the budget busters, so to speak. None of them look to be a particular concern at this time. We have to continue to monitor things like special education, out-of-district tuitions, but right now that looks fine. Our payroll overall also looks good. We never know what it's going to look like from what we budget for staff versus what we actually hire for staff. We're probably a little bit tighter this year than we have been in past years, but we're not probably, definitely a little bit tighter this year at this point than we have been in past years, but we still have a positive projection at this point by, as I say, a tighter amount than in the past, but so we look okay there. So the first quarter, really just sets the stage for us, so to speak. We pretty much know who we've hired. We begin to buy the technology, And, going forward, it looks okay. The energy stuff, we've heard a lot in the news about prices rising, but we're locked in for this year, so our budget for this year for energy should not be, both electricity and oil are locked in, so there shouldn't be any major surprises there. The only variable really will be how much we use based on how cold it is, obviously. But as far as cost, the budget is built on a little bit more than our average use, so there shouldn't be an issue there. So right now, the first quarter looks like we're in pretty good shape. Hopefully that will continue.
What does it mean when you put it in blue?
I'm sorry.
On here, it's in black and blue, and I'm just wondering if the blue means something. That's all.
Is it link?
Yeah, some of the items are blue.
Are you looking at the agenda, or are you looking at the?
I'm looking at the results of operation as of September 30th for the Neshoba Regional District FY 15. An interesting class.
Oh, that's just.
The blue, yeah, that's just a formatting thing. I think it's just a formatting thing. Because it's just our spreadsheet. The blue, as far as the account names, the blue items are personnel related, and the black items are expense account items. So any of the blue items are salary items, line items, and the black are non-salary line items. The blues through the rest of the document are just formatted. Somehow that color got carried, but the blue in the accounts and the descriptions are salary and non-salary.
Okay, so they don't mean anything.
Well, in the descriptions, yes, but other than that, it does not mean anything.
It looks like because they're at the top, that they did a fill for the, they went across with a fill and then went down with a fill.
Right, exactly, so.
That's fine, it just,
Yeah, I didn't
stood out.
notice that, but it looks like a little fun.
Any other questions for George? Okay, great, thank you. We'll have a brief discussion now about the training that we had talked about at the last meeting. I don't know if anybody's hopefully had a chance to review the brochure that Alina put in our packets. Anyone have any thoughts, or?
we do them all?
No, they do all sound good, but I don't know. There's 5 different modules and different topics in each of them. I have no idea how they would react to us asking to have all 5.
They would be thrilled.
You think they would be thrilled?
I talked to them last year about it, and they said every time they present them, they like to present all of them, because then we get a clear understanding of what our roles really are as they evolve throughout the responsibilities.
And does anybody know how long each module takes to do?
I don't think it's a full day. It might be a couple of hours. I don't think it's the big one, the one on the top. That's a big one. That's a workshop.
The building the foundation?
Yeah, the tune-up and tool-up, yeah, the school committee self-evaluation component.
Can we start with goals?
I thought that one was particularly interesting, especially
Mhm.
given
Well, it's-
what we've been spending the last couple of weeks on.
I mean, I don't know if you can do them out of order.
You know what, I think the first thing to do is really to reach out to Dorothy and let her know, and it has to come from the school committee, and let her know that we're interested, and then maybe we can ask some of those questions.
Okay,
And I don't know if you want to do it as the chair.
sure, I will.
I'm not assigning it.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to, but I don't want to step on your toes.
I'll do it, that's fine. So, there's interest in pursuing it anyway, right? Everybody nodding? I mean, I think that's probably an essential piece to find out, what kind of a commitment this is.
Yeah,
how
we
long
need to
it's gonna
find-
take
yeah.
us. Does this mean, is each module, a couple of hours, or is it a day?
I can't answer that.
I know, that's my question for them. Because I think it'll, if each of these modules is a day, then you know, we need some things to work out, because that's a big time commitment for everybody on the committee. And if it's, you know, a matter of an hour, maybe we could link a couple of them together and do it that way.
So do you want to, when you do that, do you want to come back and tell us, or do you want to schedule something? Because we're not going to be meeting again for 2 weeks, right?
Well, we don't know yet. I think we're meeting again in 2 weeks. We should talk about that too, because our schedule is, yeah, we're gonna have just barely a quorum again at the next meeting if we keep it with the scheduled date, which would be 1 week from tonight. So we might look to change that meeting. But I think we'd have to then, yes, discuss it about, once we find out more of these answers.
Well, the reason I ask is because it seems to be a push to vote for the goals and everything. And I would really like to have this seminar before we vote.
Honestly, I don't think they're going to be able to accommodate us.
I thought we were supposed to be voting tonight. No?
Yeah, I thought we were too, and I think, well, we can talk about that when we get to that, but I think this will help us, and we don't have to get, you know, we're just gonna build and get better always, we're always gonna improve.
And there's always next year's
I was
goals.
gonna say, we'll have
It's not-
another
it's
whole
not
goals
on-
discussion next year.
But I don't want to keep putting it off. I mean, I'd like to do it right.
I don't even know, Lynn, how quickly we can turn this around. I mean, if
No,
we call tomorrow and they say,
They booked until 2016 or something.
Well, I
Yeah.
don't know.
We gotta find out, you gotta know what you don't know,
I
right?
have no idea.
Do you have Dorothy's contact information?
No, I don't.
It's right on the website.
You guys have it, right?
Yeah.
I have
It's right
it.
on the
Mike
website.
Gilbert. He's our field rep.
It's Dorothy Preston.
It's all on the website.
Okay. So I think we'll sort of put off this discussion till the next time, because we really don't have enough information.
But the current contact information is right on the brochure, Nancy.
I figured it probably must be somewhere. That's fine, I'll find it. So is it okay to move on from this? I mean, I think,
Yeah, I mean, all I want to know is, do people want to do this? Because I definitely want to do this. I think we all need it.
I just asked that
Yeah.
question, and everybody in this room, there's only 5 of us here tonight, but everybody nodded yes, including myself. I'm sorry?
6.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, come on, Marcy.
That'd be great.
Okay, so
It's coming.
we learned something, then that's that at least a quorum is interested in pursuing it, and to get more answers. Okay, that brings us to the MCAS discussion. Would you like to lead that?
Sure. So I've asked each of the principals to talk about their individual schools and to speak to, you have the actual results in front of you. Each of those links represent what's available on our website and on the DOE website. And there are 2 tabs. One is around assessment and one is around accountability. So one talks about the actual results on the school, on the actual assessments, and the other talks about what that means in terms of accountability with the accountability system with under MCAS for No Child Left Behind, that was started under No Child Left Behind. So we have Florence Sawyer first, and I'm going to let him.
Thanks. Before I get started, I would say too that Clinton Public Schools is also looking at start times for high schools. And so
Oh, they are.
subcommittee there as well. So. Do you want me to go over any of the acronyms?
Oh, yes, why don't we do that, Joel, since you were. In your packet, there's a few slides that just talk about the, some of the overview of the acronyms that is part of our lingo. And, let me just find it first.
Is that in the MCAS at a glance?
Yeah, yes, MCAS at a glance. if you there we go. Great. So Jill was kind enough to put these together.
So for the uninitiated, I think it's important before we start to talk about the state accountability system that we go over, a glossary, if you will, of some of the acronyms that they use. Looking at accountability for schools with regard to the MCAS, you can't separate out student growth from student achievement, nor should you. So there are three acronyms that I'll go over. The CPI is the Composite Performance Index. It's a 100-point scale that's broken into essentially 5 levels of CPI. And it's based on student performance. What's important to understand is that the targets are 75. And 100 points are given to students that are proficient and advanced. The next one, the SGP, the Student Growth Percentile, is it's a measure of student growth over a 2-year period. The third one is the PPI, which is the indicator for a school's accountability based on the performance of students, the CPI over a period of time. There's an annual PPI, which is your performance for that year based on the school's scores relative to the targets being 75 in the CPI. And then there's the composite PPI, which is the performance over a 4-year period. It's weighted over that 4-year span. In the first year of that 4-year span, it's weighted times 1. In the second year, times 2. The third year, times 3. The fourth year, or the current year that you're assessing, multiplied by a factor of 4. And then averaged, divided by 10, and then averaged out. So there's an annual PPI number and a composite PPI number. The composite PPI number is the number that determines whether a school is at a certain level of performance. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has levels from level 1, which is no assistance needed, meeting all targets, level 2 to level 5. Level 1 and level 2 are the vast majority of schools in the Commonwealth. 60% of the schools, 60-something% of the schools are at level 2 right now, meaning least amount of assistance needed. With regard to, so that's kind of the overview for all of the other presentations. With regard to Florence Sawyer School, one of the things that we're most proud of with regard to our students is looking at the performance and the PPI. For all of our students, we met the target for both growth and achievement in both the annual PPI and the cumulative PPI. Now, going back to the idea of where schools are leveled, you are either as a school or as a school district, the level that you're assigned is the level of your lowest performing subgroup. So at Florence Sawyer School, we're a level 2 school. We're a level 2 school with regard to the performance of our students with high needs. Those are classified as students that have both special needs, an IEP, documented IEP, and or fall within English language learners or 504's ELL, English language learners, or low income.
So those are kind of the high-risk students.
They are the high-risk students, yeah. So, in looking at the PPI for all of our students, the Florence Sawyer School has one subgroup. It's the high needs subgroup, and then the students within that subgroup are students with disabilities. So 2 subgroups, but they are part and parcel of the same subgroup. You need to have at least 45 students to classify as a subgroup. When we look at our PPI for the both annual and cumulative PPI at Florence Sawyer School, we met the targets in all areas. When we look at the accountability for our high needs students, we did not meet the target being 75 always, and we met the target for our annual PPIs, essentially 75, but for the cumulative PPI, again, because it's weighted over that 4-year span, we're making progress. We're moving toward it, but it's not enough at this time to average out with those 4 years divided by 10 to hit that 75 target.
So Joel, can I ask you some questions?
Sure.
Excuse me. So I understood, ironically, everything you just said, which is because you explained it well. The students that didn't perform well, that are in, whose results are impacting the composite, do we have an idea, or do you have an idea of what those scores were over the previous years so we can see what the trend is?
Yeah. First, I would say that I think they did perform well, and if you look at the slides that are there is for the students that fall in that high needs category. There's growth in both ELA and mathematics. More growth in mathematics than in ELA, but not at that target yet. And so in terms of our annual PPI for both the aggregate, all of our students, and the annual PPI for our students with high needs, we met the target this year. But over that 4-year span, we're not there yet.
So I don't see that on here, that's why I'm asking. Unless I'm not looking at the right, oh, here it is. PPI all students?
The next one is 2014 accountability high needs.
Okay.
And to answer your question, yes, we know who the students are, we know what we need to do to help them. We have some plans in place right now to build those skill sets.
What happened? What happened with some? I mean, what's the explanation? I mean, I'm just wondering. Did you get? This is going to be a very sensitive question, but I don't understand how something could go from a 75 to a 50 to a 25 unless we had an influx of new kids moving into the district, or what is that?
Oh, on the
like say.
So the line you're looking at, 50, 50, 25, and 75, those are points that you get, and because I gave you a short explanation of these, there's a lot of factors that go into the PPI, but you get extra credit for groups of kids that move from that 238, from needs improvement to 240 into proficient, or 256.
Okay.
258, which is the proficient level, into advanced at 260. There are extra points that a school gets for percentage of kids that move from one category to another. There are points that a school gets for decreasing the number of students that are in the warning category and moving into needs improvement. That's kind of flexible from year to year, depending on where where emphasis is placed, I guess, and what the testing sample looks like, the extra points that are awarded.
So what happened, because when I looked at it online without an explanation, it was, oh geez, I feel bad for Joel. He's got to get up and talk about that. But then when you look at the document and you put it in perspective, actually it tells a very positive story.
Well,
and now take the credit. And and I think the question I have for you is, what happened in 2012 and 13 that we were at an annual PPI of 50 and 44 respectively, and then all of a sudden this past year we're up at 75? which is a success story, unless what you're telling me is we had a lot of kids that moved from, needs improvement to proficient, and that had an impact.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was, in terms of the growth for ELA, there were extra points awarded there in terms of meeting that target. And again, this is just the high needs subgroup right now. So, it's hard to say, and what exactly is the factor. In 2014, we looked at our PLUS program in terms of what we were doing with students and making it more a type of needs-based program. We've looked at some progress monitoring tools and approaches that I think have helped. One of the things that I think has been a real plus for us, aside from the PLUS program, is your support of our mathematics specialist and having her work with individual students and having her work with teachers, building their capacity. We saw significant growth in math. I think it would be hard for me to say that's exactly why there is growth in math, but I'm sure it didn't hurt.
And can you just really quickly, I know I'm asking a lot of questions, from 2011 to 2012, a slip of 5 or 6 points is noticed, but a slip of 30 points is a scary thing.
Yeah.
And we don't need to revisit history, just want to know what happened that year. Do you know?
Specifically, no. But there were, if you look at the chart, again with that subgroup, there was great growth in mathematics. There was target growth in math, target growth in ELA, and it's a group of kids that did very well on that test within that subgroup.
For 11.
In 2011.
Yeah.
Yep. And had less points in 2012 and 13.
Where do these charts come from?
These are available, Lynn, through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Okay.
It's the accountability reports.
Okay, this is what you got. So I'm wondering, these are all marked, like on the ELA and the growth in mathematics. Is a red line at the 50% mark?
Let me go back to that.
And I'm wondering, if 75 is our target, why is that marked at 50?
Which one are you at?
2014, the ELA growth. And they've got them on the math growth also.
Oh,
I see. The circle, is that what you
you're
mean?
up a couple.
Well, not the circle that I mean, because it's highlighting SGP, but when you look at the blue going across.
So right here?
Yeah, at the
So
50%.
the red rectangle is the 75. That's our target. That's where we want to go forward.
Am I wrong?
You're in different ones.
I'm in a different. I am
Yeah,
not
you're
sure.
looking at the one that says 2014 growth ELA.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I just see what you're looking at? So,
It's
Okay.
the original one.
okay.
The circles.
Oh,
The
okay.
original
The
document.
original document.
Where it's
So the CPI target is 75 with regard to accountability. The chart that you're looking at in terms of growth is the target that you have relative to your past performance.
Okay. So basically, for ELA, you exceeded it for all students and for white students, and you just below the high needs and disabilities.
Yep, improvement but below target is how they,
Okay, because like on the other side, it says on target, below target, on target.
for the math,
For ELA,
yep.
you just,
Oh.
Yep, so the math slide is with regard to, and this is a good way to illustrate this, you have all students, which is the aggregate, and 472 students tested in 2014. The high needs subgroup at Florence Sawyer School is 70 students. Within that 70 students, 50 of those are students that have disabilities. And then the final subgroup is 430 of those are classified as white students. And so wherever there's a subgroup, there's a reporting mechanism. And so with regard to those 4 subgroups, on target with high needs, on target with high needs, growth but below target with students with disabilities, and on target with students classified as white. And so the last column before the rating, you see those PPI points, 75, 75, 50, and 75.
Right.
75 for being on target, 50 for being below target,
Yep.
and
And then the other ones give you extra credit for closing gaps and stuff.
yes.
All right. It's English. And so in math isn't the problem, English is the problem, the ELA, if I'm reading this right.
Well, it's not a problem because we did great this year.
Well, no,
It's the
because
only
you
one that had
still-
something below target.
Well, actually, high needs is a little,
Yeah, I would classify, to use your language, Lynn, in terms of, no, that's all right, in terms of, the area that we're working on,
right.
we're targeting a lot of our energy and efforts around that subgroup, the students with high needs.
Okay.
And some of the ways that we're doing that are looking at, particularly with our middle elementary students, grade 3 where they have the test for the first time, grade 4 where they have the long composition for the first time, and grade 5 where we have a hybrid of that. Looking at specific teachers, and again, thank you to your support of that in our budget, a teacher aligned with each grade level in grades 3, grade 4, and grade 5, special educator that works with the grade level team. In addition to that, Tracy Conti, the Director of Special Education, and I will be visiting schools and school districts that are having, success with that subgroup, that particular subgroup of kids.
I am so glad to hear you say that, because I don't think that we do enough of that. There's so many decent school districts in the area that are doing some really cool things, and charter schools, frankly, that are doing some cool things. That's great.
Well, all due credit to Michael. That's one of the target areas that we've worked on together, and I'm hopeful that will pay some rewards as well.
That's great.
And I have one last question on that.
Sure.
So the change, we're trying to get past the red line to show that we're on target. We get past the red line, we're on target.
Yes. Yes.
So in high needs and in disabilities, we did not. So is the 6.5 that they have for students with disabilities how much we did improve, or is it what we need to get to where we need to be?
Let me just see what you're looking at. Yep. So that shows that, how much improvement there was from 2013 to 2014. Ideally, you want it to be a positive number, not a negative number. But the target, as you pointed out, is it's not quite there yet.
But we showed improvement.
Yes.
Okay. No.
So Joel's piece was the presentation tutorial.
It was the overall, yes.
Everybody else's will go swimmingly, as yours did.
So this isn't your school?
Yes.
It is our school, but I felt I wanted to go first just because I felt that it was important to understand some of the overview piece of it, because they'll be talking about CPI and SGP and other things that it helps to have some context for.
There's slackers over there.
Absolutely.
Joel, I have another last question
Sure.
for you. So when we looked at the MCAS results initially, we looked at them in the aggregate across the district by grade.
Yep.
And grade 4 was in a bad way, and it needs some help. So what are your, and please don't defer to Michael, I want to hear what you think for
I'm sure
your
we're of the
school.
same mind, but
That you may very well be, but I want to hear what you have to say as the lead of the school and the Bolton.
Well, I think fourth grade across the state, you'll see that it's a different test. It's the first test that students are asked to write a comprehensive, detailed, well-thought-out, long composition that for many students takes them the better part of the day to do, an entire school day in some cases for kids. And that can be a bit of a shock to the system, the ELA test.
But understanding, excuse me, but they've been working towards that. But
Right.
still, I know what you're saying, it's, once you get on the court, it's different than when you're in the practice.
Yeah, no, and I don't mean to minimize what the data says. I think that there's room for improvement with our fourth grade students. Our fourth grade teachers would tell you the same thing, and so we're looking at, for the same kind of thing, what are other schools doing that are finding that, finding that balance between giving kids a comprehensive school day and using the time in their best interest and making sure that they have the skills that they need to be successful on whatever assessment we put in front of them.
But that's a typical test for every fourth grade. And so is this, when we get these types of things, I mean, it says what the average is for the whole state, right? So we would either fall in, the middle or above it or below it, right?
Yeah, I'd have to defer to Michael, but I think our performance is somewhere around or slightly above the state in fourth grade. Where it's, the gap is quite a bit larger in some of the other grades.
So are there fourth grade?
No.
We're well above the state.
Yes.
We are
Fourth grade is
It's the
above.
bar comparison with communities that are similar to ours.
Yeah.
We're about 20% above the state average.
We don't want to ever be at the state average.
But I think, the hard part is plateauing and pushing forward, so it's not,
Well,
I don't think
I'm
we're.
actually, the reason I asked is I'm wondering that the ones that do relatively better than we do they have any thought, do we ever reach out to them and see if they have any
That's what he
thoughts
said he's
about?
going to do.
Wait, you want to do that, I'm sorry. I missed that.
No, that's okay. No, that's, we've met with 2 level 1 schools so far, and
What did you notice?
level, what's that?
What did you notice, anything?
Well, it's hard to say. That they're, one of the things that may or may not be a contributing factor, we have a lot of time that we give to our students that is outside of the classroom. That's, they have a lot of music. They have, we have health in our school district, and not all elementary schools do. So, it may be something in terms of time on learning, but, that becomes a question, do we want to chase that versus what we offer? So that, that's just one example. I do think that there are, particularly for students with high needs, that there are options in looking at the progress monitoring for students that, we need to continue to wrap our heads around. We've met as elementary principals and having those conversations.
So these other schools have fewer specials than we do? Oh.
Some do. Some do.
I would hate for
Not
our
all.
kids
Not
not to have those specials.
And again, I want to be
Well,
clear.
I was just going to say, that's what it all comes down to, right? How important are these little
Right.
numbers versus what we believe in?
Right,
And that's why it gets
for a well-rounded kid.
It gets really complicated when people just look at the numbers. It's like just looking at the rankings. It's not taking into account all the good stuff that we can't measure.
But that's why it's really important, and I'm really encouraged to hear that you're going to go to see some of these other schools, because I think that's really going to dictate a lot. I would love to hear more from the principals as far as what you're seeing when you visit these other schools.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
well,
we,
presentation later in the year.
I'm sure we can report on that.
That's great.
Thank you, Joel.
Okay.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank
Now
you.
we have,
Thanks for doing the hard work.
My pleasure.
we'll have Dr. Graham come up for the high school.
Hello, everyone. So Jill did all the heavy lifting and explained all of the acronyms and all that sort of stuff, so I will cut to the chase. So big picture, I came away very pleased with the results from the MCAS from last year. Was very proud of our students, was very proud of our staff. Overall, it was a very positive picture. To highlight a couple different things, so I like to see a raising ceiling and a lowering floor, and we saw both of those things last year in terms of a raising ceiling. In other words, you want to see an increasing number of kids passing the test. Passing it is scoring advanced or scoring proficient. So last year in English Language Arts, 98% of our students, our sophomores, passed the ELA test, MCAS, 93% passed the math MCAS, 89% passed the science MCAS. Those were slight increases from the previous year.
Here, passed is proficient?
Passed means proficient or advanced.
Okay.
So that's a combination of proficient and advanced together. And just to give you some historical trends over the last couple of years, in ELA, in 2012, we had a 94% passing rate. In 2013, 95% passing rate, then 98% last year, so that was a 3% increase. In math in 2012, we were at 92%. In 2013, at 92%, 93% last year, so a 1% increase. And in science, 2012, we were at 88%. 2013, 87%, and then 89% last year. So I mean, you get a little bit of a, I mentioned ceiling, of a ceiling effect in that you can only go so high. Particularly in English Language Arts, we only had 7 kids who didn't pass the test last year, didn't score proficient or advanced. You can't go a whole lot higher than that, but that's a good problem to have. So I was pleased with that we see increasingly raising the ceiling. And then on the flip side, also decreasing the number of students who are failing the test. We have a pretty small number of kids who are failing, but that number continued to go down last year. So last year in Language Arts, only 1% of our students, which is roughly 2 kids, failed it. So there are then 2 levels that are considered to not be passing. There's a needs improvement and then failing. If a student scores needs improvement, they have still met the Commonwealth's requirement for graduation. In other words, they don't need to take the MCAS again in order to be able to graduate. We have to put together a plan that makes sure that they are continuing to take, say it's math that they needs improvement in, that they're continuing to take math classes and doing well in those math classes, but they don't have to retake the test in order to be able to graduate. If they fail the MCAS, which is a score of 219 or lower, they have to retake the MCAS and get at least to needs improvement in order to be able to graduate. So it was 1% of our ELA students who were at the failing level last year, 2% of our math students, 1% of our science students, and those are marginally decreased from the previous years. In ELA, 2012 was 2% failing, 2013 was 2% failing, then 1% last year. In math, it had been 3% the 2 previous years, and then 2% last year. And in science, it had been 2% the 2 previous years, and then 1% last year. So we have a very small number of kids who are not, who are failing the MCAS, which is wonderful news. We also saw improvement with our high needs group. Joel talked a lot about the high needs group, and he also talked about the different ways that the state slices and dices the numbers. They're looking within different subgroups that you are increasing the number of students who are passing, decreasing the number of students who are failing, increasing the number of students who are at the advanced level, increasing growth that students show from one year to the next, and they give you all these different points for doing that. And with our high needs students, we saw a pretty dramatic increase in the points that were assigned to us. Joel mentioned the PPI, which is the annual score that they give you, which was great. It was, I believe for our high needs students, it was a 93 last year, where 75 is the target rate. So that was a very dramatically positive increase in that score. We actually missed being a level 1 school by 1 point. So had our if you look at all students, we made that no problem. High needs, we scored, you have to get to 75, it ended up being a 74, and that's a composite of this last year and then the previous 3 years, as Joel mentioned, so we literally missed it by 1 point.
Yeah, but that means this year.
But it's great, because they do, it's because it's the composite of the last 4 years. If we can continue to build on that and do really well next year, then that means that we're on track to be a level 1 school for the following year. So I thought all those things were very positive, so I was very happy about all of that. In terms of kind of ahas, things that I took away, one positive aha was that we really had a very high score in terms of our high needs kids with the way that the state puts together that composite number. But the one big thing that, despite the fact that we showed an increase with our high needs students, that's still an area that we have to focus. That is, we scored dramatically better than the state average when you look at all students on essentially every measure. Our high-need students only score marginally better than the state average, and historically, there have been some years where we were at or even slightly below the state average, if you look at our high-needs kids. So that's not acceptable to me. I want us to continue to be helping our high-needs students do increasingly better.
So how are you going to do that?
So the couple things that we've already done, and I think there's some things that we've already done that I think helped lead to the improvement last year, and some things that we need to continue doing. Some of these things you've heard me mention before. Our Math Foundations class is the supplemental math course that meets every other day that combines a special educator and a regular educator, although students do not need to be on an IEP to be in that class, and we have students who are not on IEPs, plenty of students who are not on IEPs in that class. It's nice to have a special educator and a regular educator together. It's a small class size. It's a fascinating class in that they're really building a class based around the kids. They don't have a set curriculum and they say, we're doing this, 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 and this. It's really looking at the individual needs of the students that they have and then trying to build supplemental programs for those students. They're using direct instruction for a whole class. They're doing small group work. They're doing one-on-one support. They're doing some online work with kids as well. So that's one very positive thing that I think is going to help those students who come in, and particularly in the freshman and then also their sophomore year, who really just have some gaps in their basic foundational mathematical skills. I think that's really going to help them. And we're not doing that to get higher scores on the MCAS test. We're doing that to help them be successful over time in math. But I think that likely will end up having an impact there.
And they take that class as recommended by the 8th grade teacher.
Or it can be recommended at the high school as well. It's not limited to freshmen. We have non-freshmen in the class as well. It's primarily freshmen, but yes, it's the 8th grade math teacher who recommends that the student be enrolled in that course. And it's an elective course, so that's not in place of their math class. It is in addition to their math class. So they will take most likely Algebra 1, and if they're a freshman, and then they're taking Math Foundations in addition to Algebra 1. It meets every other day, so it can go opposite wellness or it can go opposite of study.
So is it covered as one of their electives to graduate, or is it called any kind of?
Yes, they earn 2 credits for it, so it counts towards the overall 90 credits that they need to graduate. So yes.
So how is that curriculum determined? You said it was based on the individual students' needs or the gaps that they have. How do they determine where their gaps are?
So they've done some assessments when the kids first come in. So we have some information coming in. We have their MCAS scores. We have some information coming in from the 8th grade teacher or from the previous math teacher if they're already at the high school. And then we've been using a web-based program to do some assessments to try to get a sense of where the different gaps are. And then ongoing, just working with the individual kids, collaboration with the math teacher as well. So if they're enrolled in an Algebra 1 class, also getting feedback from that teacher about areas in which they're struggling. We're trying to make sure that it's not just a prep for Algebra 1. There's some maybe like looking at a concept that they're going to be doing in Algebra 1 in the next week or two and giving them some prep work, but we're trying not to have it be just a, help you out in your Algebra 1 class, but really also trying to go deep and figure out like what you need. I mean, we have some kids in that class who have some pretty low grade level math skills. So it's
And this is the first semester it's been
the
offered?
first time we've ever done it. Brand new course.
So far, does it look like it's a good idea?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I hear very positive feedback.
Good.
I hear very positive. And if you also look at the grades of the students in their math classes, the student in their regular math class, the students who enrolled in that, they just told me, I was just asking Katie Giannetti the grades, and it was like a remarkably high percentage of kids are doing like, B or better in their math classes. So that, at least early indications appear to be very positive, and I hear very positive things from the 2 teachers, Katie Giannetti and Laurie McDonald, who are teaching the class.
That's great.
So that's a positive thing.
Has everybody that wanted the class got it?
Yes, anyone who was recommended for the class got the class. And we have room that we could put a few more kids into it as well. And we built 2 sections of it specifically to accommodate the number of kids that we have. So another thing to your question, Lorraine, that we're trying to do is if you look at the number of high needs students, so Joel mentioned that high needs is a composite of students with disabilities, ELL, and low income. Students with disabilities comprise 2/3 of that group, so it is largely, it was I think 35 kids last year, 22 of those were students with disabilities. So that represents kind of the largest subgroup of that subgroup. In the past, when we the way that special ed caseloads work for students, in other words, the special ed teacher that you were assigned to, is generally it was you had a special ed teacher your freshman year, you moved to a new teacher in your sophomore year, you moved to a new teacher in your junior year, you moved to a new teacher in your senior year. which made some sense because, you know, there are kind of different challenges that you face at different years, and so different teachers kind of had specialization. But it meant lots of transitions for the kid. You'd really get to know that student, and then they'd be moving on to someone else, and that person would have to get to know them as well. So this year, we changed the way that we did that. So now we have 2 special educators, Katie Giannetti and John DeGennaro, who work exclusively with freshmen and sophomores, and they keep a kid for 2 years. So if Katie Giannetti takes a freshman, they keep that freshman the freshman year and then the sophomore year. And then we have our other 2 special educators for the general population, Jim Nozell and Cheryl Gallagher. They then will take a student in their junior and senior year, and they will stay with that same student for 2 years. Because then the junior and senior years become, you know, it's different. It's the transition freshman, sophomore year, and then you're starting to think about your next big life transition, junior, senior year. That's a little bit, it's not entirely clean because you tend to have more students on IEPs in the freshman, sophomore year, so we've done other things to try to make sure that it's an equitable and balanced load. But that appears to be very positive, both that we have 2 people working in conjunction at the same 2 grade levels, so Katie and John are able to work collaboratively, and then Cheryl and Jim are able to work collaboratively, and being able to stay with that same student for a couple of years, I think is very positive. So I'm looking forward to that having an impact as well. Another thing that we've done this year it's happened, but we're doing it in a more formal way, is a more formalized co-teaching between special educators and regular educators. We've always had special educators going into regular education classes and working with the teacher there. But we put a lot of time, that can look differently, and the ideal way for that to look is that it's really a co-teaching model, that the 2 people are kind of working symbiotically and trading off. And so we had all of those 4 special educators did some professional development in concert with 4 math teachers, and so they're each now in a true co-teaching model with math teachers, and we've seen that be very positive as well. So I think that's something that will lead to positive results. I really think, though, that we need to continue to look at ways that we can work with our high-need students. You know, we're doing the Math Foundations class in math. I think that it might make sense to try to do something somewhat comparable in language arts, whether that's a focus on writing, whether that's a focus on reading skills, some combination thereof. That's something that Jackie Carter, the English Language Arts Department head, and I are talking about. So figuring out ways we can continue to supplement and provide a curriculum and a curricular program that's not as concrete as what the state requires, but is a little bit more flexible to meet students' individual needs. So that's what's going on with high school.
So your scores are high because those guys behind you deliver those awesome kids.
They do.
They take care of everything, and then you...
And I just sit back and eat my bonbons.
That's how it goes.
It's a fantastic job. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So who's next here? Center School.
Sorry.
It's okay. No worries.
I meant to do that.
So I personally thank Lorraine for acknowledging all of the work that we do to help Mr. or Dr. Grimm. I appreciate that. We'll all be dreaming of numbers tonight, right? So thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak a little bit about MCAS and really how well I think as a district we've performed. Just a quick overview of Center School's results. We are designated as a Level 2 school. This is our second year as a Level 2 school. As Joel had indicated earlier, the large percentage of schools in the Commonwealth lie within this particular level. It's suggesting that, sure, there's some improvement that's still needed, but there's not a great assistance that's needed. So we're proud of our efforts, but we also acknowledge the fact that we really still have some areas that we need to improve upon, and I'll speak a little bit more about that in just a moment. A few things that were on a positive note were that Center School met many of the annual PPI targets, which is great. And then, as Joel had alluded to earlier, there are extra credit points that folks can receive for decreasing the number of warning and needs improvement students, and also increasing students in the advanced level. In order to do that, you have to increase the advanced levels over 10%. And so Center School was consistent in doing that in both ELA, math, and in science technology. So we received extra credit points because we had over 10% increase from our members in each of those categories. And as you're going to hear from some of the other highlights, really that's where we saw our performance probably improve the most. we took our kids who were really proficient and we moved them into advanced. So for example, 44% of our fifth grade students performed advanced on the mathematics test. We had 14 students school-wide score perfect scores in grades 3 through 5, which was, compared to the previous year, was an increase of over 9. We had 51% of our third grade students perform advanced on the mathematics test, so that was, again, over 10% increase from previous years. So we're very pleased with the work that we're doing in moving kids along from proficient to advanced. Where we really need to do some work is the high need students. And so while we're making improvement in those areas, we're certainly not improving as fast as we'd like to. So we're drilling down, as I think Dr. Graham had mentioned, as Joel had mentioned as well. Some of the things that we are doing is that we're implementing some things that continued to work last year and I think can be attributed to our success and improvements in the advanced categories. And then looking at other ways to make sure that we really adequately are addressing some of the specific needs for our high needs students. This year, we are formally implementing Reader's Workshop. It's something that you've heard Mary Rowlandson talking about over the last, I think, 4 to 5 years. We've consulted with the Teaching and Learning Alliance. A fair amount of my line item for professional development at Center School has gone to that this year. What we're doing is we're making sure that we develop really rigorous units of study, which also aligns nicely with the work that we're doing as a district. We're trying to move at a little bit of a faster pace because we've realized, quite honestly, over the last 2 to 3 years, the scores in Stowe, specifically at Center School, have plateaued. And while we're still high performing, we still want to make sure that we're improving on all fronts. We're implementing a new open response protocol. What we're realizing we know is necessary is that there's some consistency in the language that we use with kids. And while we're all teaching kids how to answer open response questions, we realize that there's not consistency in the language, and maybe we're not practicing it as much as we need to. We all know that that's an effective means to intervene, is giving kids additional opportunities, and in some cases making sure that we present it in a different way to help them to understand it. So we've developed that school-wide, rolled that out at the beginning of the school year, and teachers are implementing that in our plus groups. We're quite a large school this year. We continue to grow. We're 642. It's one of the largest numbers that we've seen in a number of years in Stowe. And so, to that end, what we're noticing is that there are lots of kids that we want to talk about. There are lots of kids who are struggling on all continuums, and in order to be able to do that effectively, we decided to split out our STAT teams this year to make sure that there's a pre-K to 2 meeting every week and a 3 to 5 meeting every week. That allows us to talk more frequently about the students that are in need and to check in on their progress. And to Joel's point from earlier, really making sure that we're progress monitoring them. So if there's a baseline assessment that we see and we have the numbers, we're going to make sure that we're checking in much more frequently to see if they're responding to the interventions that we have identified as a STAT team.
Can I interrupt you for a second, please?
Sure.
I notice on the accountability tab that there isn't anything that indicates any high needs.
So because Papa Syndicate in Center School up until 3 years ago now were 2 separate schools, you have to have enough data for 4 years for there to be able to be a baseline to suggest that there's high needs, and that's why there's nothing specifically identified as a subgroup. My suspicions are that that will be developed after this year because it'll be 4 years as an entire school.
Okay.
But if you drill down to the data, that's how we know that there's high needs and that we're not responding the way that we'd really like to be responding to. And the kids aren't responding as quickly as we'd like. So to that end about open response protocols, we're in the process of working together as a team to develop and implement a general open response protocol for social studies and science and ELA. We think that, again, that consistent language will have a pretty big impact. And then we've discussed and generated our own district best practices. As a school, we continue to talk about that and make sure that those are being implemented. In most cases, they're research-based best practices. But again, there's that consistency of making sure that everyone's doing it, that students know what it is to expect For example, we've talked for years now about essential questions. Well, those are expected to be posted in everyone's classroom, and not just posted, but referred to before, during, and hopefully after. Students have to have a real meaning behind what it is that we're doing, not just be, oriented to complete the task. And so that's something that we're really making sure that we deepen students' understanding and try to, engage them more into learning, not just completion of tasks. And then finally, we continue to implement our plus group model. We've taken a look at our schedule, which seems to have worked pretty well in the last couple of years. As I said, I think that one of the things that we can attribute to this, not the same analogy as Dr. Graham, but we raised the roof, if you will, with advanced. I think some of those things work really well for us in plus groups. We got lots of informal feedback from students, parents, and then of course we can see from the results that some of that had an impact. So those are things that we'll continue to do while also looking at, again, making sure that we are tapping into the interventions that are most effective for our high needs students. And that is Center School at a glance.
It's great, thank you.
Thanks.
I'll keep losing track when I go to a different page, so.
Hale is next.
Hale is next.
So we'll give you Hale School at a glance also. So overall, I want to just say that the results we had were really very, very good. And I think everybody whose efforts went into that deserve a lot of credit because we were very pleased with the results. Overall, the CPI, which was one of the data points that was discussed, I think that's a good point because what it does is it shows you, but it also, sometimes like the Boston Globe is a great example. They always use the pass, not pass type statistics, and as you said earlier, anybody who gets either proficient or advanced passes. But that's a huge performance difference between some aspects of that. The thing I like about the CPI is it factors in how close kids were to pass it. You get a lot more points when you get a 238, which is only a couple points for passing. You get 75 out of the 100 points. Whereas if you get a 208 on the warning, you get 0 points. So the CPI, you can help you look, when you look at the percentage of kids who pass, and then you look at the CPI, you can see how close they are. And that's always important, because there's always a lot of kids, just one of those things, I guess maybe as we key on that number, but it seems like more that number than any other number in the whole thing. A lot of kids are right around that 240, and that would probably make sense. That's the way the tests are calibrated, etc. But the difference between 238 and 242 is only a couple questions, but it's also kids flip back sometimes when they're in that area, and it's in the category of needs improvement versus proficient is sometimes that close, and it seems to happen a lot. So looking at CPI overall, I thought we did pretty well. Our ELA was well over 90, is 97.3, and our math was 92.8. So analyzing the results overall, over the ELA, I thought was really good. Once again, talking about CPI, in 8th grade, our CPI was 99. So it's kind of funny. 2014 was always the year they talked about being the 100% proficiency in the old No Child Left Behind law, and it was 99.1 in our 8th grade class. So 4 students did not achieve the advanced or proficient, but by the fact that the CPI is 99.1 in that class, it shows that they were all very close. No one missed it by much, and you couldn't have a CPI. So to me, that shows success, and particularly the fact it's in 8th grade, I think is a tribute to the whole program over the 3 years that we've built and spiraled the curriculum in a way that by the time they get to 8th grade, they were able, and it shows that way too. We do proceed that way. You look at the numbers, we get better each grade. And I think that's because we're building on what we're teaching these kids, and some of the things I think have helped make that happen are our vertical team planning. We have one period a week where it's available for the English teachers to meet with each other and be able to talk about what they're doing and further intertwine that. That just started last year. We've never done that previous to that, where there's a dedicated planning period for them to do that. So I think we'll continue to build, I hope, on that success. A couple other things that I thought were positive. overall, the math was lower, which is the way it is statewide. But I think the trending overall is good. It's not as good as it was last year, which is a bit of concern, which I can talk about in a minute. But overall, one area of good news in the math was that our open response questions really have improved over the last few years. We put a lot of effort into the math open response and having kids do that, because that used to really impact us somewhat negatively, frankly. And one of the ways that it became really obvious to me is, it's kind of a strange way, but we get the raw scores in June for the math, but we don't get the open response. And the state gives you a way to project them. And every year we were falling off. In other words, what the performance looked like in June. Once we get the total results in August with the open response added in, we fell off. So we spent a lot of effort looking at, and we knew it from other ways too. All the charts show how you did an open response, and it can be obvious. But we really have built up well the open response. I think there's been some good instructional techniques put in place that are valuable for our kids in order to do that. There's class questions being utilized on MCAS type rubrics, that type of scoring. So, and that's shown. So that was one very positive thing about math. The other positive thing was sixth grade math. It's a challenge for us because we had to replace this year a great teacher, Sheila Flaherty, who retired as our sixth grade math teacher. Really has had a huge impact with these kids in recent years. And once again, you can see it this year. 62% of our sixth grade kids scored advanced, and they had an 82% student growth percentage. So that shows some really good learning that really makes for a good basis that hopefully we can build on going forward to make our kids more successful. Because if there were things that that weren't as positive or weren't again overall good results, but looking for the things you can improve on, our math scores, as I say, were down a bit, and they had been really good the year before at over a 95 CPI, so they were down to 92.8 this year. So that's something we certainly take note of. We wouldn't want to see that happen again at that level. We've changed some things this year in the 6th and 7th grade, particularly the way we use our plus classes is different. The 8th grade class that just left was a very large class, and when they were in 6th and 7th grade, they had a dedicated plus class. As you recall, we had to hire an extra teacher that taught a plus class that was mainly based in math and ELA. And those kids' scores were really good almost to the entire time they were there. So we're trying to build that model with our current staff. So instead of having a plus class in every subject or that type of thing, this year our plus program is all math and ELA based. So the kids have 3 extra periods of math, 3 extra periods of ELA in there in each week, taught either by the math teacher or the science teacher for math, or the English teacher, the social studies teacher for ELA. So those plus class periods we have are all being based on those standards. It will give us the opportunity also to work in some of the other subject standards, science, social studies, like for example, nonfiction reading is one of the objectives. Take something directly in the social studies curriculum and put that into the ELA class, the ELA approach to the social studies subject matter on the nonfiction, just to give them more exposure to those items and just build that base. And I say it's kind of in the theory what we did with one teacher. It's a little different, but the general theory what we did with that larger class, which is 113 kids, a lot of times class sizes, because large class size is considered a negative, but that class was really very, very successful, I think, because we were able to put the resources towards them. So hopefully that will help us in our math side of things, and our ELA, but our math particularly. What else did I want to say? The other, the math, we had a few more kids not end up in the warning zone this year in math, which we don't want to see. And also, like the other people talked about a little bit, another focus we have is our high needs crew is not doing as well in math, and we haven't been able to see the type of growth there that we would like to see for what. And it's a little mystifying, to be honest with you. I was a little surprised we didn't show more growth this year, because the instruction I saw going on and that type of thing seemed really improved and better, and I was surprised the results weren't quite as much better. So we continue to look at that all the way across the board. With our math teachers in the school, we are putting a professional development focus on that this year. We want to go out there and attend a seminar or two and get some research into how do you reach kids who struggle? And, what are the strategies that we should directly be using for these kids to really try to make an improvement? Once again, those teachers also have the advantage of the, what we call the vertical team planning. And as we planned out the year, what they're going to do in the vertical team planning, that's going to be one of the main focuses of this. How do we work with struggling kids to improve their math scores? Because it can be, it obviously is a major challenge. So those are the things we're looking at trying to improve. Overall, looking at the comparison data online, I think Hale, as they did do well overall. Looked at the dot comparison that we talked about in our 11 or 12 person group. We were second in the group that the state compares us to, the different middle schools throughout the state. So I think that shows that we have pretty good performance, but we like others, want to go out and learn from the others who have even better performance, especially with our high needs people, to try to make that improvement as the year goes on. And that is Hale in a nutshell.
Questions?
I'm just a little curious. Under warning failing, it's 0 English, 6 math, 0 in 8th grade, 0 English, 3 math. So, is that typical?
I'm sorry, where are you looking at?
On the MCAS test of spring 2014.
Okay, so grade 8 you're looking at?
Well, 6 you get a 2 and 3. But you go to 7 and 8, and English is 0. So everybody passed. And you just have 6 and 3. 6 for 7th grade and 3 for 8th grade.
Just don't know what chart you're looking at.
Right here. So, she's looking at the warning and failing, the math.
Okay, yeah. So those are the warning, yeah.
Yeah.
So is it typical, is that your question?
Yeah, I mean, you've got 100% passing, which is great.
No, because needs improvement is a separate category. As Perry said, needs improvement for high school graduation is considered passing, but the 240 score is really what I think we look at for advanced proficient. So we have some of the needs improvement category too. So the warning, are the numbers you see in the far right. So even though, like I mentioned, 8th grade, for example, if you look, even though, as I said, 4 people did get the 100 CPI points, so therefore you see them in needs improvement. None of them were in the warning zone, but 4 of them were in the needs improvement zone. So you really have to, to find students who are not proficient, you have to add those 2 categories. Okay, so is it typical overall? Yes, I mean, I'd like to think that it is typical for the warning. I think for the most part, we don't, to have a 0 in the warning is not surprising to me. I mean, that's our goal. If anything, 1 and 2 of those numbers are a little bit higher than I would have liked or expected, frankly, to see in the warning zone. The 7th grade math number is high. I would not expected that number of students in the warning.
6 is high. Well, we only need 1.
6 is, 6 is 3.
Yeah, but 10%.
No, about 3%. 10%, if you look at everybody, but 3% of them are warning. There's 90 kids in the class. Well, like I said, I think it's important that you try to pick out what you can do better, because there's always improvement, and we want to improve to the very last kid, because it's never good enough until everybody does well. But like I said, overall, I think the results are very good.
Well, they look really good. I mean, I'm just wondering about 0. I mean, is it typical that somebody be really good in English but not good at math?
Yep.
So there's no correlation there.
Sometimes there is, but it's not to see a vast divergence is not strange either. I mean, it can go anyway.
Mayor Rollinson?
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to share the Mary Rollinson MCAS scores and talk about what we've been doing. as the superintendent often says, MCAS is one piece of judging how students are doing. In some senses, the MCAS is one very important piece because it is how the public looks at us. But I've talked at other meetings in the past about all the other excellent pieces happening at Mary Rowlandson School, like the enrichment programs, how the PTO is really supportive, the tremendous amount of volunteers. So, we try to judge the success by a lot of measures. So tonight, though, I'll just focus on the MCAS data and what that's telling us about the teaching and learning at Emory. We were very grateful to be recognized as a commendation school in the Commonwealth. So that meant we were one of 42 schools out of the 1,800 schools to be recognized for closing that achievement gap. Some of the areas that stood out to us when we were reviewing the data that made us proud was that 35% of the fifth graders were advanced in science, 41% of the fifth graders were advanced in mathematics, 28% of the fourth graders were advanced in ELA, and that was a 7% increase from their scores in third grade. Third grade also increased the amount of proficient students. They had 87% that were advanced and proficient in mathematics. So those are some specific scores that really spoke to us and made us very proud of the work that's been going on. When looking at the MCAS, I find it most helpful to look at trends over time. And the trends that are very evident to validate a lot of the work that the school's been doing and the school council goals that we've been working on. The trend shows very continual, steady incremental growth. The CPI has gone up from 87 to 88 to 89 to 91. So that trend just continues. 6 years ago, the percentage of all students who scored advanced and proficient was 60%. And that has steadily grown almost 2% a year to 70%. So what this tells us is that we're on the right path, is that we want to continue to work on the professional development we've been doing with the balanced literacy approach to reading and writing and implementing the Writers' Workshop. This year, we had the teachers do a self-reflection and a needs assessment to look where we're going in terms of implementing Writers' Workshop. And we're going to focus a lot on conferencing and giving feedback to students, effective feedback. That has paid off in the reading areas where the explicit instruction that they've really worked on and refining and done a lot of peer collaboration on. For instance, last year, as I said, 28% of the fourth graders were advanced. High expectations. That's another thing that has come through the collaboration and really looking at the district and Common Core and looking at the models that are expected for students. Teachers and parents have really come to expect more and more of students. Parents are seeing that evident in our school council surveys. We had the highest score we've had in years to the response of 96% of the parents agree that MRE encourages their child to achieve to the best of their ability, and that has grown steadily as we've increased our expectations. And one other takeaway from the positive aspect we see that is working is the academic support and the collaboration among staff is really paying off. For example, about a year ago, we came at budget time and asked for a writing teacher that we shared between Burbank and MRE. And that is one area we can look and correlate that teacher's support as well as the reading specialist and the math specialist directly to improvements in, say, that fourth grade long comp where they scored 2 points better last year in their long composition scores. They typically scored, I believe it was in 14, and this year they were scoring a 16, or 13, and this year they scored 15. And so that collaboration with the reading specialist, the math specialist, and the writing specialist, along with the teachers, is really paying off. So, what are the areas we're going to continue to work on? As I mentioned before, 70% of the students are scoring proficient in advanced. We want that to be more. That means 30% are not, and we need to get that number down even more. And how are we going to do that? We're going to continue on the path with this professional development. Fully implementing Writers' Workshop this year should help give us a boost in the open response, as well as continued growth with that long composition and students being able to express themselves in writing. This year, you've heard a lot of talk about the high needs students. One thing that's helped us in the past is really looking at data and the Ames Web and district benchmarks. This year we're implementing something I've been calling batch stat, so trying to catch students earlier, not just at the 3rd and 4th grade levels, but for instance our kindergarten team just met with the reading specialist, myself and some of the special needs teachers, to look at the lowest 25% of the students based on all the assessments we just did, and aligning them with who has support, what double doses are happening for them, and then what we're 6 or 7 weeks into school, what progress have they made. We've set a date to meet again. So instead of just talking about one student or a couple students here and there, we're going to try at grade levels to look at batches of students and their interventions and progress. And then lastly, we're going to continue. One of the standards that popped out in the MCAS analysis is called integration of knowledge and ideas. There weren't many questions on it, but we want to dig into that. The percentage wasn't as high as we wanted to. We want to see what that standard entails, what are some samples. I think it really goes to keeping a focus on critical thinking and answering open responses, which has gone up, but we need to keep pushing that too. So, in summary, we're really, really proud of the accomplishments. The staff, the parents working with their children have really pushed MRE in just a wonderful, positive direction, and we want to just keep that trend line going.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So do you have
I'm sorry, what?
Did you apply?
We got a piece of paper. And it fell off the board, and I think it went into the recycling. I'm sad to say. Oh, no.
We'll make it out. We'll make it out. Questions? Move to Burbank Middle School.
Good evening. So you've heard a lot about subgroups. So I want to talk a little bit about subgroups too. Every time you have a category of, I believe it's 30 or more, it's considered a subgroup. And it's interesting, part of the high needs subgroup, as Perry had mentioned, is low-income students with disabilities and ELL students. And our low-income subgroup has, for the second year in a row, they're the highest performing group that we have in the school. And one of the subgroups will obviously be all students. So it's really amazing. Their PPI is 92 this year. It was pretty close to that last year. And that really speaks, I believe, to the effort on part of the teachers, and especially the Title I teachers. We're a targeted assistance school. Through the grant, we're able to provide support to this population, and the data certainly indicates that it's working, and it's working well. Another subgroup that I need to mention is students with disabilities. And for the first year in the last 3 years, we did not meet the target with this group. This was very troubling to us. In no way am I making excuses, but facts are facts. We had over 20% students in this category. That's really high. I believe the district average is somewhere around 13.5. The state average is around 17, and we were at 20.2. So just by sheer numbers and the the various disabilities. It created quite a struggle for us, and we weren't able to meet that target. Fortunately, it didn't impact leveling status because it's an average over the last 4 years, and we have done much better in the last 3 years. So I am confident that with a lot of energy, a lot of focus, a lot of looking at the data and making good instructional decisions, we'll be able to get back on track.
But did your students with disabilities improve from last year? I mean, individually?
We did not meet the target.
But did improve.
In terms of growth, we were below target on growth for ELA. We were on target for math.
When they do that, they're comparing fifth grade to fifth grade, year to year, right? They're not comparing, they're actually taking the children from, with the fourth grade to the fifth grade. Did they improve? I'm sorry, so sixth grade to seventh grade, did they improve?
Sixth grade to seventh grade, you're talking about students with disabilities?
Yeah.
Yes.
So they did improve, so.
Yeah. But overall, I mean, you're gonna have individuals within all those groups that improve. Some have great improvement, others have minimal improvement or some decline.
But when the state looks at it and they say that you didn't meet the target, they're looking at sixth grade versus sixth grade, right? Year to year? Or they
Yes.
actually- Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Just in terms of the student growth percentage, anywhere between 40 and 60 would be considered moderate growth. 60 and above is high growth. School-wide, the student growth percentage for ELA was at 60 and at 65 for math, which I'm particularly pleased about, because math school-wide is a lower performing area for us. Speaking of math, our seventh grade scores last year, again, another area that was really troubling for us. They just did not perform well. And this is a situation, a scenario where the teacher loops with this group of kids. So they're in the 8th grade, the teacher with the same group of students. It's given her the opportunity to do some real in-depth analysis, and she firmly believes that the root cause of their performance last year was mostly around their inability to apply math concepts that they had learned. They can compute, they can solve equations, but when they are faced with things like word problems and the higher order thinking application, they did not do as well on. So our remedy for this situation is to provide more opportunities for them to exercise those higher order thinking skills. It's interesting, we had the exact same situation in 2013 where our 7th grade students did not do well. We had a looping scenario too, and that teacher, and I'll mention the name, Jackie Macharia, last year worked very hard, same thing, lots of data analysis, worked extremely hard with the group of kids, and they had some fantastic growth. It's the highlight, I think, of all of our MCAS tests. The median growth percentage for the 8th grade math last year was 75, and again, anything above 60 is considered high. So we're really pleased with her. She had, in 7th grade, those students in 2013 had 29% were advanced. After last year's MCAS, 42% were advanced. So again, kudos.
She worked them hard though.
What's that?
She worked them hard.
Working very hard. Working very hard, and the fact that she was a looping teacher, that really paid off. And again, I'm confident that this year, with our 8th grade teacher, she's going to be able to do the same thing.
So, did you just say before that the looping didn't work?
No. I think the looping worked really well.
With the last one that you were just talking about?
Yep. And so because I'm confusing you, I'm sure, with the 2013 versus 2014 test. So 2013 and 14, both times we had 7th grade students not perform well.
Okay.
In both scenarios, they looped with their teachers. So we have results from one of those loopings, which was the 2014 test last year for the 8th grade. We'll get those same results this year. for the-
Okay, so in 7th grade, they did poorly, they looped with the same teacher, and they did really well.
really-
Crazy.
And she was the one that realized that they weren't applying the math?
Both teachers have concluded that. The data shows,
So it's
both
just
those
typical-
7th grade classes, it shows that.
Okay, so it's, you think it might just be typical for that age group?
No, I wouldn't say so. Because I see a difference when I look in the district, I see a difference. So I think it's part of the practice that we're doing, and we think we know what, a way to improve, and that's what we're working on. We've invested a lot of energy over the last several years, looking at ways to improve, and certainly open response was an area that we had not done that well in. And again, last year, we had put some things in place to address open response, and I'm very happy to say that, again, that's probably the next best accomplishment we've had with this test. The results for our open response questions were very, very pleasing in all of the ELA tests and 2 out of 3 of the math tests. Science, the science test really is a moving target, I think, at the middle school. Students are tested only in the 8th grade. We don't have the benefit of looking at, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade results and trying to put different things, programs, and strategies into place to show improvement. So it's really difficult to get a lot of information out of the 8th grade science test. We know we need to improve. And one of the things, one steps that we've taken this year is to provide vertical team time for our science teachers. We've had it for the last couple of years for the math and the ELA teachers, but we're including the science teachers as part of this. And currently they're working on, they're focusing on lab reports and trying to develop a template that will be used grades 6 through 8, and will really be able to show a lot of progression, a lot of independence for students as they grow, as they go through the grades, demonstrating more independence on this lab report. We believe, based on information we got from the high school, also that this is an area that our students have not performed well in. The other piece with science that we're really trying to take a look at is vocabulary. Science is so heavy with vocabulary. We need to find other techniques to not only teach vocabulary, but to reinforce vocabulary. And we're looking at ways that this can be done through multiple disciplines. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great work on leading our schools and our teachers and parents and students. So congratulations.
Thank you very much, all you principals. Thanks for spending your evening with us.
Our pleasure.
I'm going to, in the interest of time, propose a little switch up here on the agenda. I apologize, I have to leave at 8:15. I didn't know that I was going to be breaking quorum by doing this. But I'm afraid I can't get out of it. Believe it or not, I have a work appointment at 8:30. It's my busy season. So I would like to, we have to schedule the November meetings, and I'd like to postpone the policy readings. Is everybody okay with that? Sure. And then, so talk next about the next meetings, and then skip to old business. And we've already decided we're not doing the honor rolls. We have two things in there, that's district improvement plan and superintendent's goals. I don't know if realistically we're going to be able to get through those two things in 15 minutes. I don't think so. Can we pick one to do? Can we decide that we want to, how does this impact your schedule, Michael, if we don't take a vote on one of these two things?
It doesn't impact my schedule. I think, unless the substance of the district improvement plan is, drastically going to change. I mean, we're working towards all of those
For the budget.
goals. But I think if it's technical components and the information that's still needed, I don't see any problem with waiting on either one.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Yes.
And if you could try to get the goal MASC seminar before our next meeting?
If we can try to have that workshop before the next meeting?
Yeah, I'm not really sure when we have the next meeting.
I don't know if that's realistic or not, Lynn. I mean, I can inquire how far in advance we have to set these up, but I'd be surprised if I could call one day and get them to come in the next. I mean, I would imagine they'd plan,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
a couple weeks or a month. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I would think so.
Yeah. Okay, so, first things first, let's talk about our next meeting. It's supposed to be November 5th, that's what's on the schedule. However, we already know that because of the MASC workshops, we've got 2 people out for that. I'm away at a conference, so we're already down to quorum, and that doesn't leave any room for anybody to be sick or have a sick kid or anything like that. So I would suggest we not have it next week, a week from tonight, but move it to 2 weeks from tonight. But I don't know how that fits with everybody's schedule.
That's November 12th.
I'm gonna be out of town, but I don't need to be.
You're going to be out of town November 12th and November 5th.
I mean, we could probably call in November 5th.
But you have to have a quorum present in the room.
Right.
So we would still have to have the quorum physically here, and then, yes, you could call in, but
So that's the question, is
That's the
would you
problem.
have, what, 5 other people
500
here?
people. And that, just, since you haven't been to the conference, that's the banquet, and I think you might want to go to that.
Only if George is buying.
It's already paid for.
I'm not gonna be there Wednesday, I'm only gonna be there Thursday night, so
Yeah, because
I guess if we don't leave,
Cole
we
mentioned
can
to
go
me,
Wednesday.
we could always tap in, but, or we could just tap in for that point of the meeting. I mean, you can't, it's up to you guys, it's up to you how you want to handle it.
Well, I mean, it really is up to everybody.
But I'd hate to have you move it all.
I mean, we could just keep it next week and,
That's,
and see what
Oh.
happens.
next week is the 5th.
Right.
That's the week, that's the night we won't be there. Oh, you
Right.
mean, see how many people show up.
right. So we
I know.
we have to have everybody who's, I mean, two of the 5 of us that have to be physically here are not here tonight to commit to whether they can make it.
Right, that's part of the problem. We're still on the warrant signing schedule hasn't changed.
Right.
So, just like we had to come in last week to sign, even though we didn't have a meeting, we'll have to come in next week to sign, whether we have a meeting or not.
Correct.
Can we get a motion for 2
Yep,
signatures?
we could do that.
Like we did in
Don't we do
December?
3 in the summer?
Right, I think
We do 2 out of 3,
2 out
a
of
quorum
3.
of the finance committee, so we could do that.
That would be helpful.
That would be helpful, because it was a pain in the neck last
Right,
week.
Yes.
right.
Um,
So if we could, have a guarantee of 2 out of 3 of the finance committee members, that'd be great.
Okay. And would that be for that specific meeting, or would we make a motion that at any time, if we don't meet, we need 2 out of 3 from the finance committee?
I would do that, that way you're covered.
Maureen, would you like to make that motion?
messing up my life in these couple of weeks, but I move that for the weeks when, how am I moving this? That for weeks that we do not meet when we have warrants to be signed, that we will authorize that we only require 2 out of 3 signatures from the finance subcommittee or their designees in lieu of requiring the whole school committee to come in to sign the warrants.
Or a quorum of
Or a
five.
quorum of 5.
Excellent.
Second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. That simplifies things.
Great idea, Mr. King.
So now we just need to decide, do we meet November 5th, or do we meet November 12th? Or do we look at even,
Postponing to the 19th.
yeah, our next meeting after the 5th is the 19th, which we already have the auditors coming in that night.
I would suggest you should go for the 19th.
No, go the 12th. Get out, because we've been postponing this stuff for a long time. This is what, the second or third meeting?
Yes. But you're also the same person who wanted to try to get that workshop in first.
I do?
I mean, I don't,
No, no,
I'm just throwing that out there.
no, and I agree with you. Do we want to,
Well,
maybe?
like I said, I have no idea when we can get that workshop in, but we'd have a better chance getting in for the 19th than we would for the 12th.
Yeah, with the 19th, we could.
I would Yes. These two are not pressing to make a difference of a week.
What to?
The district improvement plan and superintendent's goals.
Okay.
And then the honor roll, it still works to be able to do on the 19th, because the calculation can take, if the school committee so desires to start it this year for the high school, the calculation can be done the very next day, and it can be published, so,
If we meet when?
on the 19th.
On the 19th.
So,
Does that mean we only meet one time in November?
that's what it would be.
That would mean that.
I'm fine. It's like date night. I mean, really, I'm gonna miss it.
This is your date night?
That was good, Lynn.
Well, should we take a vote?
Sure.
Okay, so, the options are, we meet on the 5th, we meet on the 12th, in addition to the 19th. So wait a minute,
Which one are we doing?
let me start over again. We meet the 5th and the 19th,
As
one option,
originally scheduled.
as originally scheduled. That's option A. Option B is we meet on the 12th and the 19th. And option C is we meet on the 19th only.
Oh,
Yes.
I put my hand up for option C.
option C?
Okay.
We're meeting twice in December, and we start the budget when?
Late January this year, because of new administration, they have extra time to propose their budget.
We have a lot of stuff coming up.
Most of it's going to be policy, actually, I think, in terms of.
One thing that we should get sometime is the October results, the Emerson College, Emerson
cap.
Hospital
Oh, yes.
Oh,
results
yeah.
come out in October. I checked the website yesterday and they weren't out yet, so.
Something.
It is released.
So yes, it means, pushing off the improvement plan and the superintendent's goals are the things that will continue to be pushed.
But it's not because we're not talking about them. We've talked about them in all the meetings. It's just that they're not finalized.
Right.
This is the only time we haven't talked about them.
And I think it's, if we had the option to include, there's 3 people who aren't here.
I know.
And it's an important topic. It's a really important topic. And I think it's important that everybody have the opportunity to feel good about where we're all at.
I agree. I wish there was,
That's what, 10 minutes?
Yeah, that was long.
10 minutes?
This is for the
The audit.
20 minutes?
The audit.
20 minutes.
and you mentioned that
I was just gonna say, it really depends on how many questions we
Yeah,
ask.
It's a clean audit.
It's a very clean audit, and they don't really have any big recommendations of things to improve or anything, so it should be a feel-good session. You know, there was nothing controversial. I was home by like 7:30, and I was chatting with someone after the meeting, so.
Are we going to be able to tell them that this year we're actually acting on their recommendation to audit all of the, what the district owns?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That was mentioned, that that's in progress or close to whatever, so, you know, they're aware that
That's great, because I've heard him a couple of times, and he says the same thing every year, and it's like, oh my God. So that's great.
So I don't think that's gonna be a big time sink in our meeting.
I can do my best to get those answers from the MASC sooner
email
rather
them?
than later, and send it out, as long as we're just distributing it as an information piece, not as a discussion piece, via email, what I learned, and when the availability might be.
Would that mean that we wouldn't be able to have the discussion on, not a discussion, but to let you know what would work? Right.
Well, I think if we were just talking about logistics of when we could meet, people could respond to that.
Yeah, scheduling is fine.
Because that's scheduling,
Yes.
that's not a discussion.
Okay.
That's not a discussion.
A debate.
Good question.
So if I put the information out in email, you can respond to me in email about when
Perfect.
you might be able to do this. And then I don't know if I'm gonna have anything definitive or not in terms of a date from them, but if I do, we can act on it.
That's great. So around sketching, this is not necessarily specific, so it's kind of a little bit off topic, but, and I'm bringing it up now because there may be another time we should talk about it, and we can even take it offline if it's more appropriate. I am not going to be able to make 9 a.m. policy meetings.
Oh, yeah, we can work on that.
Travel, schedules out of control, and,
Oh, we'll
Yeah, we
work
can
out
work on
with
that.
your subcommittee, what
Yeah.
works
Okay.
for you.
Definitely.
all right. Because
We've
that's the
always-
work day, and I
Yeah.
I just can't.
We've always shuffled those around.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so Kathy, do you want to like turn that into a motion, option
I would like
C?
to make a motion that we choose option C.
Which
is option
Which is
C?
to meet on November 19th only. All those in favor? I think it's unanimous. I mean, from who we have here, I don't know a better way to do it.
Yeah, because next week, next week is too risky, because we're already out of quorum, and we don't know, since the following week is normally non-meeting week. Right. People may have other commitments, so.
Who seconded that?
Oh,
I thought you did.
I don't think I did, but I will.
Who seconded it?
Who did?
I think Nancy just did.
Okay, so zipping through here, the only remaining thing we have to talk about is correspondence. And I've seen a couple of things. One was related to the honor roll discussion, which I think we will postpone that till the honor roll discussion happens. The other one that I saw was a request, actually two different requests from two different boards of selectmen asking for our presence at meetings. And I just want to throw out there that, I think we need to take some sort of action that reestablishes either what the point of the Tri-Town meeting is, or what the point of these, why we need to keep going to selectmen's meetings when they can come to our meetings, and that's the whole purpose of the Tri-Town meeting, is for the selectmen to be able to communicate with us and vice versa. And I'm not sure why we're getting double duty. Now, so far, the request has come from two different towns, both Bolton and Stowe.
Bolton wanted the whole.
Did we reply with the question saying, is this
We
a
didn't.
subject that we can't reply, that we can't cover in the tri-town, or?
Well, so, no, what happened with the latest request is that the email was rescinded because the date didn't work for them. So they said disregard that email.
Okay.
So I probably shouldn't even be bringing it up because we were supposed to disregard the email. However, I was confused why the whole school committee was invited as opposed to just the stove.
That was my
I think
comment.
that's what they meant. When I read it, that's what I thought they meant.
And in Bolton, that's the way it's been. They've invited
And that's
Bolton
just us.
representatives
Right.
to the meeting,
Right.
which is a little more palatable, but I still feel like it's double dutying with the tri-town. And if we're all going to be doing this, if we're all going to be going as representatives to our selectmen's meeting, whether it be quarterly or annually or semi-annually or whatever it's going to be, then I think we really need to evaluate why we're doing tri-town meetings. Because I don't think we need to do both. And at some point, I think they have to meet us halfway. We keep going to these meetings, and they're not coming to our meetings. So,
And that came up, Julie brought that up at the Lancaster, the last Lancaster Tri-Town. Who were you?
I wasn't there, I was at a.
But she did mention, you know, you can always come to our meetings. You were there, Michael. And I forget the reason. It was like, but we can't really have an open discussion in your school committee meetings.
But we can. I mean, we could definitely structure, an open conversation as part of the agenda.
well, I mean, we have citizens' comments now. If there were certain meetings that they wanted to attend, we could put it on the agenda as a, discussion time with all three town board members or something.
Yeah, right. We can make Tri-Town a section of our
It
agenda.
could be a part of our meeting.
Yeah.
Which
And we
is,
could do it once a month or once a quarter.
Once a quarter, yeah.
Once a quarter.
Once a
I think that's
quarter.
a great idea.
once a quarter would be great.
Yeah,
And,
once a quarter, make it an agenda.
And then maybe it would be a more productive session as well, because as we've all experienced one time or another at these tri-town meetings, we don't get a critical mass, and our
But you know what?
productivity is not so great.
And also, I'm okay, personally, I'm okay
Yeah.
with going to when Bolton calls us, I'm okay with having a conversation just with the Bolton selectmen, rather than
Yeah.
in a broader meeting when it's directed at just us.
Mhm.
I'm okay with that. They don't do it that often, but I don't know, I guess you gotta approach them.
All right, well, I just kind of wanted to get initial feedback and bring it up as a topic, as I promised I would. I'm gonna, does anybody else have any correspondence that hasn't been brought
No,
up?
but just,
The tick.
many phone calls and emails about it, but I'm assuming it's all been handled.
It's all been handled. I think, I think what he's looking for is for some sort of district-wide announcement, and we wouldn't normally do that.
No, I think, because Joel got back to his, I guess Neil sent an email to Joel and CC'd me on it. Joel today, this afternoon, responded.
Okay.
So I was on the CC for it and said
Okay.
it was being handled and he was going to be sending it out in one of his updates
Right.
this week.
Right.
So I think we're all good with that.
We're okay.
Okay, good. I just need a motion.
I just have a question. It's probably procedural. Since there's a letter of correspondence about the honor roll, and I'm not going to address it now, does that correspondence go to the next meeting, or?
We can bring it forward. I did have, because I got it late, and I'd already heard that she had to leave at 8:15, I did tell the writer that it wasn't going to be discussed tonight, because she had some emergency, and so I did, of course, I did say to her that it wasn't going to be discussed tonight.
Okay, I just didn't know if those get forwarded, or they were on the.
Well, they're always on the
It has been
web.
posted, so
It has been posted. It's always
everybody
on
has
the
an
web.
opportunity to read it.
Yep.
Well, they do, but I mean, usually the correspondence for that meeting is on, this agenda.
We can make a
So-
special folder piece to pull all the correspondence related to honor roll,
Okay.
and that way it's there during that meeting
That's a good idea.
on the 19th.
Yeah, on the 19th,
On the
which we just
So we can
established.
make
Right.
sure that everyone's heard.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I need a
I make a
motion.
motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
My goodness.
Okay.
That works well to have that.